Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles.
So we're in chapter 6 now. We ended up chapter 5 with a little bit of geography. And now in this chapter we do a lot of geography because it's dealing with the political situation, of the Middle East. And Amos, of course, well, we'll see. Again, it's this man never ceases to amaze me. I mean, because basically, it's going to be redundant, and I guess at some points I'll not talk about it too much. But most of the lines in this chapter are poetry. Practically every line is a poetic structure and various other elements. I found 2 or 3 chiasms, other structures, sounds, the whole, the number of words, etc. Hi, Barbara, welcome. So, so that's another factor. And I was reading something about this just by background. So the article was talking about this, and they really don't know if, on the one hand, this poetic style was actually how the prophets expressed themselves, or if subsequent generations of their disciples or disciples of their disciples took their messages and redesigned them into poetic statements, perhaps for emphasis, for power, or perhaps for memorizing purposes, right? Because a lot of these structures actually help you to memorize. They don't know. Okay, and he's not the only one. But I'm learning just from reading this stuff and looking at words that pop up. He is the first prophet whose standalone work we have, right? 760 BCE. Hosea is a few decades after him. Isaiah is after that, etc., etc. Elijah the prophet has no book, right? We have stories about him in the book of Kings. Moshe is obviously, but that's a whole other situation, right? And I got to move him into a category. It's a different category. But the words that he uses increasingly, I've been noting this through the whole poem. We'll see it, are very rarely used. We've talked about the hapax legomena, right? The single time in the whole Bible. There are a number of them you'll see we're going to come into. But being one of 2 or 3 of only 4 sources in the entire Bible to use these words, it's unbelievable. And the question is, why is that the case? Is he the person who is developing that particular word? Perhaps based on an existing root, a shoresh? Is it just a stage of evolution? I don't know. But it's fascinating, and it makes him appear to be a brilliant guy, which maybe he was. Okay, Tybal.
So I don't know why. I'm wrong, but I'd assume the order within Nevi'im is chronological in time, because the first few books start out that way, of course, or chronological. So that would mean, unless I misunderstood, that because Amos, but they're is it not chronological because the so-called minor, the shorter ones were all grouped together?
No.
But how is Amos, and I'll ask you because it's your secular name, we don't have the same kind of words from Joel?
No.
What's in the book of Joel? I don't remember offhand.
But that's actually later.
Even though it's in our Tanakh before.
Yes, that's right. And Hosea is the first one, right? He lived after Amos.
Well, what's the ordering then for within those?
I'm not sure.
I'll look it up. Thanks.
Yeah, tradition. I don't know. Barbara.
I'm just curious. You said it before and I didn't really put it in there, that he was the first prophet. Since he was the first prophet, do you think, and you can just say you don't know, that he had any idea that he was unusual with his prophesizing and stuff, being the first one? I would think that was kind of a hard thing to be doing. Yeah, people must have thought he was mad.
Right. Let me clarify. he is preceded by prophets, okay, like Elijah, right? But
Okay.
he is the first one who chronologically, we can know because we can date him, not only by the names he uses, but by the language. And, the whole situation that he's talking about. He's talking about, the northern kingdom at a time when it is actually in a relationship of tolerance with the southern kingdom. They have a kind of a pact between them to cool it, and but the northern kingdom was the much more powerful of them, and it was a period when they had very large borders, and that's their mention. Okay, so we get in a sense, and the thing is this earthquake. Okay, the people, earthquake specialists, have actually done research and from a scientific point of view. And the earthquake that is mentioned in the first chapter of his book, they know was around 760 BCE. And that's around the time that the political situation that he appears to be talking about, it fits right in that niche. Okay, so, but again, that's the matter of the compiled book, and we don't know exactly when the compilation of this book was completed. That's the point. We just don't know. So, he was, I say the first one whose collected writings appeared. Okay. All right. Leon.
I was simply going to say that Amos himself refers to other prophets. He says, God created the prophets with you, so we know he was not the first prophet.
Okay.
No, I'm saying, but we don't have the works of those other prophets. Jeremiah refers to dozens. It's Bible scholars will tell you that there's no question that there were prophets all over the place of different shapes and colors, so to speak. Right?
And we know from King David that there were kingly prophets all over the place.
Yeah, and in fact, many prophets. Yeah, but where are their books?
Yeah.
That's my point. Okay, that's the point. We don't know. Yeah, Bernie?
Rabbi, are we studying this book tonight?
Are we what?
Are we studying a certain book?
Yeah, the book of Amos.
No, but which chapter?
Chapter 6. Chapter 6.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I missed that. Thanks.
Yeah, chapter 6. Yeah. Okay, all right. Now let's go ahead. Okay, so here we go. So we were talking, this chapter has got considerable geography in it, which is why I sent you the map. And I have a second map to show you, which I'll do by myself. Okay, so here we go. Hoy, again, you see, hoy is again this lament, this sound of oive. Woe be. So he's got a tragic message coming. Hoy hashananim b'tzion, v'habotchim bahar shomron, nekuvei reshit hagoyim, uva'u lahem beit Yisrael. Okay, so this is a poem. You've got two subclauses in this. So the first one, Hoy hashananim b'tzion, v'habotchim bahar shomron. Okay, woe unto those who are sha'ananim, carefree, b'tzion, v'habotchim, and those who have faith and trust in Bahar Shomron, right? The Samaria. So the two capitals of the two kingdoms are mentioned, and in both cases, the people who live there are very carefree, feel secure, things are great, things are going wonderful, okay? So that's the first, so that would be AB, and then the second two would be CD. Nekuvei reshit hagoyim, uva'u lahem Yisrael. So nekuvei is a very interesting word. Nun kuf vet, that verb means to make a hole, okay, but it also means to make a mark. So the translation here, these are notable people. The people who have
made a mark.
A mark of, you think of think of military uniforms, right? And so they are marked by what's on the lapel, that type of thing.
Epaulette.
Yeah, exactly. So the point is, these are the dignitaries, the notables, right, of the Reshit HaGoyim, of the kingdom that is the most the leading kingdom, the head of the kingdom. Or that's what they're saying to themselves. Uva Alehem Beit Yisrael, and the whole house of Israel has come to them. All right, and that too, if you want to break it down, is a poetic structure. Okay, now the things that this is presenting to us, again, you can see the critique of the prophet, right? So first of all, why is Zion mentioned here? Because as a kind of a puppet partner with Israel, so in both places there are people who look to this government, this kingdom, as a source of security. And at that point in time, given the fact that the boundaries of the northern kingdom were at their furthest extent, that they had a king in Jeroboam II who apparently was distributing a lot of wealth. Okay, there were large groups of people who seemed to have benefited. Of course, there's also a whole bunch of poor people, right, of whom Amos is trying, whose case Amos is, so to speak, bringing to the court. But again, it looked great to certain groups of people who are the ones you hear about. Okay, you hear about the notables. You don't hear about the poor guys who are struggling to feed their family. Okay, so Amos is picking up on that, and that's what these people are, right? This is, but he's saying, woe unto them, because something bad is going to happen. Bert.
You did it. I'm looking at the JPS 2023 translation.
Yes.
Which ends, on whom the house of Israel pin their hopes.
Yeah.
And you translated it in a very different way.
That. It says, that is an interpretive translation.
Okay.
The house of Israel came to them, right? They have come to these notables, okay? And it's all talking about the whole theme of this is people who feel secure. So they're not coming to them to complain. There's nothing in the first part of the sentence or the first three quarters of the sentence, and there's no sense of a group of people who are standing up and complaining. Amos doesn't talk about them at all. He's the one that's complaining. So the assumption is that, in a sense, so this is an interpretive translation. They're pinning their hopes, right? They're secure in this leadership. Okay? All right. Now, good. Second verse. So now he's going to build his argument in the other direction. Iru kalne or uluhu misham chamat rabah, urdu gam plishtim, hatovim min hamamlachot ha'ele, im rav gvulam migvulchem. So Amos is now saying to all of these people who are so secure in being part of the Israelite kingdom and in their leaders who brought them to this point. So he says, go pass over to Kalne, and from there go to the greater Hamat. All right. Now these are two towns.
Syria.
If you look on your map, all right, you need to look on the map and look in the if you look in the purple area, can you find Damascus? Start at about Israel. You see Israel. Look up from Israel, you'll see Damascus. Then look up again, you'll see Hamat. Okay, so there's Hamat. That's greater Hamat. And then, wait a minute. I'm looking to see if Kalna is on there, because if Kalna is further north, could be Karkamis, could be Kalna. Yeah. All right. So if you find Hamat, Kalna is yet furthermore.
And Hamat is kind of a dull lilac.
Yeah, right. There's a color change right beneath it, and it's a white dot. Just look at Damascus and just draw a line straight up. You'll go through Arad, and right above that you'll see Hamat. Okay. Now, just by way of explaining, it appears from Amos that the furthest reach, the northernmost point of the empire, is south of Hamat. You see where it says the word Phoenicians? Everybody see that? It's vertically written. Tyre, Sidon.
Yes, in the pink.
Yeah, it's in the pink. Yeah. So just above that, just about to locate the location, that would be what's called Lavo Hamat. Lavo means the way to, how you get to Hamat. In other words, it's the road. It must have been an important junction in the road to Hamat. That's roughly the northernmost point. And the southernmost point, as we will see later on, is somewhere, if you look down in the gray area, find Petra between Judah and Edom. Do you see it?
Yeah.
All right. So that area down there would be the somewhere in that area would be the southernmost boundary. Okay. All right. But I'll have more to say a little bit later. All right. Anyway, so these are these towns. These are towns up in the north, and then it says the Urdu got Plishtim. All right. So. The town of Gat, yeah, the town of Gat of the Plishtim. Who is the most famous person from Gat?
Goliath.
Goliath of Gat. That's right. And he got deserved. All right. Okay. So are you guys? Then he goes on to say, Hatovim min hamamlachot ha'ele. All right. Are you any better than these kingdoms? And in fact, im rav gvulam migvulchem. I mean, are their boundaries any bigger than yours? You're all a bunch. What he's basically saying is, you are all a bunch of small countries. Okay, and even the extensive boundary of Israel, if you look on the map and look at the extent of the Assyrian Empire. So, I mean, ultimately, as great as Israel is, so if you go from, let's say, the S on Phoenicians, in that vertical Phoenician, down to where it says Judah, okay? That's it. And it's very narrow, all right? Now look at the empire. And even just look at the empire where it was, when Amos is talking, which would be in that the dark, not the bright pink, but the area that is extended to where the darker pink is. I mean, it's huge. And then it's going to get bigger within a few decades. And eventually, of course, by the northern kingdom begins to fall apart to the Assyrians around 737. Okay. And that's the beginning of the end of Israel. So, the point that he's making is, you guys think you're the cat's meow, you're the greatest. Wow. Well, he's saying that's not true. You have big heads. You think you are greater than you really are, is what he's basically. Okay. All right. Now, moving on. So to show you, in a sense, the truth in what Amos was saying. Now, of course, by the time you get into the 7th century, the 600, yes? So by that time, the northern kingdom is gone, and you have Judah, and you have a Judah around 700, 690 that has under tremendous pressure from the Assyrian Empire, and they controlled certain areas already in Judah, but ultimately they pulled back because they had more important people to deal with. But the point is, it was a huge empire. Now, Josiah, who became king in 640, and he ruled until about 609. So that's when so the great Josiah, who brought about what we call the Deuteronomic reform, right? And he made sure that he had envisioned a kingdom that included parts of the northern kingdom, and he welcomed the northerners into the south, and he was trying to reconstruct a more unified, monotheistically oriented country. Okay. But he also was dealing with an international situation where he had to make some judgment. So he may have had bad intelligence. So in 609, he went up to Megiddo in the northern part of the country. You've heard of Megiddo, I assume. Har Megiddo became the foundation of the word Armageddon. Har Megiddo, where, if I'm not mistaken, there are 22 different strata of archaeological digging. 22. I think it's the most complex dig. So he went up there to do battle with the Egyptian army. Okay? And he may have wanted to defend Judah's borders and its independence. That's a possibility. The Egyptian army was heading north, okay? And presumably it was, that could have either been an attempt by Egypt to expand into the Assyrian Empire, which had become weakened. Babylonia was beginning to make noise at the time. Anyway, so that we don't know why Josiah went yet. So he may have tried to prevent the Egyptian from attacking. I'll read the note here. Some scholars suggest that Josiah might have backed the wrong side in the complex power struggles of the time, believing that Babylonians would benefit from delaying the Egyptians. So you could say Josiah was really thinking in terms of the rise of the Babylonians and said maybe we should start playing, being on their side. Lord knows he did not like the Assyrians. Anyway, the bottom line was I think he misunderstood the size and power of the Egyptian army that was moving north. And he died. He was killed in battle, and the Israelites lost that war. Now they were not taken over by the Egyptians because their interests were more northward. But so there you have an example, though, of how, as much as Josiah tried to strengthen Israel, when these big empires or nations begin to move, and they move with force that they can put together, the little countries don't stand. And that's not unreasonable. Anyway, but Amos is really picking up on this concept. He's saying, you guys don't understand it. Okay. Now here, from verse 3 on, he's going to now explain why it is that they don't get it. Okay. One of the reasons, because their self-indulgent life, or let's say the self-indulgent life in particular, that the leadership really does not, they don't understand what's going on. He's got it's a philosophical argument that he has with them, but in a sense, it's a realpolitik one. He says they're just so focused on self-indulgence. Not only do they stomp on the poor in the process, knowingly, but also they have no idea about the reality of the political situation in that part of the world. Okay, so verse 3, this is what these leaders, he's talking now about the leaders for whom everybody had all that praise, okay, in whom they trusted, right? This is his picture of them. Hamanadim liyom ra v'tagishun shevet Hamas. The menadim, it's from the same root as nida, nun dalet hey, which means to push away, to ward off. So they push away thoughts about the bad day, the Yom Ra, that could conceivably come. And instead what they do, they substitute it with the following. Tagishun is from the word nagash, and this is the Hethil form, which means they bring together. What do they bring together? They bring together an acceptance of evil action, right, that you do on others. So, and he has in mind the poor, okay, which is the most obvious target because that's whom they abuse them all the time. So that's their reality, okay? They don't want to think about the realistic situation, which is hard, which is challenging. Rather spend their time on planning all kinds of things to get at the people whom they want to cause suffering or suffer. Okay? Now, so the translation here I think is a good one. And it is a 6-word AABB poem. 6 words. Hamanadim liyom ra v'takishun shevet Hamas. 6 words. And I can break it down, but I won't spend time. That's what the structure is. A prime, B, B. All right. So the translation we have is you ward off the thought of a day of woe and convene a session of lawlessness. All right. And that's pretty accurate. But then it goes on more than that. It's getting worse. Listen to this. But this should sound familiar because we've seen this argument before. Hashochvim al mitot shein usruchim al arsotam ve'ochlim karim mitzon ve'agalim mitoch marbek. Okay, so they sleep on ivory beds and they stretch out, lounge about on couches, okay? And what do? Ochlim karim mitzon. They eat the lambs of the sheep. Ve'agalim mitoch marbek. And they eat the calves from the fattening stall. Fattened calf, okay? What do we call fattened calf meat?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
What do we call a fattened what?
That's veal, isn't it?
Veal.
Well, that's a calf. Veal is a calf.
Just that fattened calf. Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were talking sheep here. Okay.
Well,
calf.
Both.
Right, calves from the stalls. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But they're actually, the word that's used there is a word that's an ancient Semitic word which deals with cattle. Okay, and here it's understood to be what I said. And the interesting thing, though, is that this is, one second, I want to find my note about it. Yes, so marbek is a word. It's only found 4 times in the whole Bible. And again, it's interesting. Jeremiah, 1 Samuel, and Malachi. And all 3 of those works that use that word were written later, much later than when the prophet prophesied. So here again, it's that what we talked about earlier, that term, very rare. And here too, this is it's a form of it's a poem. In fact, you can even hear Hashochvim al mitot shein usruchim al arsotam ve'ochlim karim mitzon ve'agalim mitoch marbek. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Actually, the first one is 2 or 3 or 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and parallels all the way a poem. Now, so here, but you see, I see your hand up. When you see these images of lounging about, right? What culture does that remind you?
Egypt and Greece.
And Rome.
Roman.
Mm-hmm. So now you see the Israelite, we Jews, we did even better than they did, because we got these fattened meat here. This is terrific. So who's got to go to Greece, right? Who's got to schlep over to Cairo? Cairo wasn't in existence. To Alexandria. We got it here. Alexandria wasn't in existence either then. What am I talking about? Forget it. The other cities, they're Thebes, etc., right? I don't got to go there. I got it right here. Wow. Okay. So we got Tybal and we got Leon. Go ahead.
I don't know what made me think about it, but I was thinking about having a bed of ivory and what would one have to do to both keep it clean and keep it comfortable? Because I don't actually think if you were right on the ivory, so it really becomes both a statement of wealth in terms of resources and servants to clean and all the bedding things.
Exactly. Sure. All right, Leon. Well,
yes, I unmuted myself. Sorry. This refers to Shevet, which is Shevet Hamas, which I find in my translation as being described as an error in writing. Okay, yeah. And I was wondering what your thoughts were about it. Oh. They claim that it's probably was Shever, okay, or Shod, in terms of an error in that was made when it was edited. Yeah, well, the reason for that is that Shevet Hamas doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, it's a challenging thing. I haven't.
Well, if it was, Shever, then it could be a disaster,
Yeah. Well,
and that would make more sense.
Just give me a moment. I'll see. I was sort of, the way it's translated here. A second.
What does the word shevet mean?
Well, it can mean to sit, gather a session where people sit around.
Right.
Yeah, and shevet achim gam yachad.
Shevet achim gam yachad, right? But you see, shevet Hamas doesn't make sense.
Oh no, but it's a shevet in order to, out of which comes violence.
Okay.
Result of the shevet, it brings about. Here, hold on, the shins.
Yeah, but the translation is session of lawlessness.
Yeah, well, it doesn't. Lawlessness, we don't know. Hamas, by the way, Hamas means violence, not lawlessness.
Hamas means violence, right?
Right, but I'll tell you, No, but the JP when the JPS was published, and this translation in 60, even though it's been republished, it's in 1960, and the thinking of the meaning of Hamas has changed. Nothing to do with the Arab term, because that's an abbreviation. Just happened, that's a coincidence. But the point is, they now know from other sources, from newly uncovered Semitic parallel and usage. Hamas, the primary meaning, the Bible, number one on the hit parade, is violence. I checked it. I was very surprised. So it makes sense in terms of how they deal with other people. It could be weak when they violence in conquering the king. By the way, when he made his conquest, he was not a nice guy. I mean, he could be very violent. On the other hand, he could be very shrewd and make all kinds of nice promises, these towns conquering. And, as long as they paid their taxes and paid homage to him, he didn't care. So, I mean, he could do all kinds of things to promote himself and to promote the power that he... So, but that they come and sit, and the point is, they don't recognize the real evil, the portent for evil that exists down the block, so to speak, or let's say, around the corner. And rather they spend their time, wasting their time, thinking of how to do bad things in the areas they do. Okay, now let me just take a look and see what we have here.
Is the word Hamas the same in Arabic as it is in Hebrew?
I don't know. No, Hamas, remember, is not, I don't know that that's an Arabic word. I don't know. All I know is that Hamas means...
violence.
No. Hamas doesn't mean violence. It means it is an abbreviation of a...
Oh, okay.
Abbreviation.
Oh, okay.
Or some other...
It's an acronym.
Acronym. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Shevet, here we go.
Yeah, it means Islamic resistance movement.
That's it.
Oh, funny that they pick an acronym.
Or it is almost.
Hebrew means violence.
Well, that's the whole idea of what they do.
I know, but would have thought they would have used something else.
Well, I think that's kind of to stick it to the Israelis.
But there is an Arab word, Hamas, which means zeal, strength,
I didn't know that.
and power, and it kind of migrated to that.
Oh, okay.
Do you know if it's spelled the same way?
Uh,
Or like in Hebrew?
I don't know enough Arabic. I've forgotten my Arabic letters. Once upon a time, I knew them because I was debugging an Arab dumps, in Israel. But I've forgotten them.
Huh.
All right, so here's what this is what the Curler Baumgartner. A more likely in Amos 6:3, Shevet Hamas, and this can be interpreted either in the first or in sense the first shin with cessation, but Hamas with the violent termination, or it could mean some kind of throne, the rule of sin. Two options. But Shever is something that could mean a distress.
And of course, though it's spelled differently, there's Hamas as a place, talked about in the prior verse.
What?
Hamas is spelled differently.
Hamat.
Yeah, it's a different, is it Hamat or Hamas?
Hamat.
Ah, okay. I thought it was Hamas.
That's the, anyway, so, I mean, the answer is, who knows?
Our usual answer.
Tekoa. Remember, Tekoa, Tishbi, the Mashiach, when he comes, when Eliyahu Hanavi comes, he will tell us the answer to all these unanswerable questions. But it's a bad thing, whatever it is. They're planning something bad. Okay, this is what this wonderful leadership does. Oh, no, then going on. All right, so no, the other thing that they do is they spend time indulging themselves, right?
Right.
And they lead their corrupt life of indulgence. The poor suffer, and the world around them is undergoing a radical change in the Assyrian Empire, which is beginning to flex its muscles. And again, if you look on the map, you can see, that by the time that this was as I said before, the areas that ultimately fell to them later on were step by step being conquered around that time, and they were beginning to knock on the doors of some of the areas just north of what was their boundary. So that empire was percolating. Okay. Oh, now Hamas. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Do you know the Arabic, what it stands for, Vered?
It stands for gazlanim.
No, no. Hamas actually means violence.
It means
not just everybody used to think it meant theft, right? But
it does not mean. It means to do something not correct. לעשות עוול.
Yeah,
So
bad avel.
To bad avel. So
Violent.
you can use it as a verb and you can use it as a noun, and it's just the difference in the vowels. So the first one is a verb.
Yeah.
And the second one is a noun.
Okay, thank you. But so it says how you act. You act with Hamas. But as I said, the latest Hebrew language, Bible language. I'm talking in biblical. The latest lexicon puts the word violent as the number one meaning out of 9 possible meanings. That's that in terms of context, it takes different subtle twists. But the first one is violent. And given the reality of today, I'll take that one. Okay. All right. So this is what they're doing all the time, and the world is changing around them. All right. Now, but he's going on. He's continuing. Remember, these people are lying down, eating the fatted animals, having a wonderful time. But more than that, verse 5, Haportim al pi ha-nevel, kedavid chashvu lahem klei shir. Isn't that nice? So they are portim. This is, again, hapax legomenon, guys. That form, that use of the root pe, resh, tet. This is the only place. It's a verb, making a verb into it, and with this kind of meaning. And nobody really knows what it means. Did Amos make up this word? I don't know. But that's an example of his creativity. But the meaning we can draw out from the context. So they do something with a lyre, right? L-Y, that kind of liar, not somebody who tells a lie, right? I'm sorry, no, it's a lute. Sorry, the lute, not liar, a lute. So what the JPS is, they hum snatches of a song to the tune of the lute. So portim would mean they draw out a prat can be a specific element, a narrow element. So you have, klal uprat, right? If you have a specific statement of law versus a general statement of law, okay, you have to follow the general statement. That's in Pirkei Avot, okay? And it defines it means a little piece of something. So what they're doing here, what the translation is saying, what they're doing is they're sort of humming to a musical instrument little tidbits of songs. Okay, so you imagine, or having somebody play that for them. Again, this is the scene, right? They're lying down on their lounges, eating the fat meat, and either they or somebody else is playing this nice music for them, and the chutzpah they had.
Yeah.
David chashvu lahem klei shir. Okay, and they thought themselves as being, as skillful on the musical instruments as David. Again, they live in this opulent, self-indulgent dream world. They're dreaming with this lovely music. Okay, isn't that exciting? All right, more self-indulgent.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
Can I just add something? I'm sorry.
Yes, of course.
We just ended chapter Hey. And in chapter Hey, I recall in verse 23, he was talking about Nevel. Nevel is a harp. Yeah. But there he says, V'zimrat nevalecha, and the melody, the singing of your harps, I will not hear. Yeah. Here he uses another verb, portim. And I know that if you have a musical instrument that has like a nevel, and you go with your fingers like this, yeah. In Hebrew, it's called lifrot ala nevel.
Oh, there. So it's from this.
So it's probably related to Hanavi Amos.
Yes.
Because that's
exactly what we're talking about. Right. Good. Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
So is my translation that says pluck the correct one?
What?
My translation into English says plucking.
To pluck, yeah.
You who pluck at the
Yeah, it's all the same thing. Yeah. So
Yeah.
here they say snatches of a tune. Same. These little brief bring, bring. Yes, and a musical instrument like that. I mean, if you listen to, you go to a concert and they got those huge harps, right?
Yes.
I mean, so that's big time stuff. But these were little instruments that you could hold, and it's the same thing. Bring, but having fun. Yes. All right. Yes, but it shows you their chutzpah. They put themselves in the same category as the great David. Okay. All right. Now, however, and what else goes on? And here he really is going to make a point right now. Hashotim b'mizrakei yayin b'reishit shmanim yimshachu. And I'll get to the end in a minute. Hashotim b'mizrakei yayin. Right? They drink straight from wine bowl. So mizrak, right, actually comes from the word zarak. Zarak means to throw something, right? But when you talk about liquids, it's to sprinkle something. So a mizrak is a large bowl that was used in the temple for sacred ritual purposes, like sprinkling blood on the altar or sprinkling oil on certain forms of flour to make a mincha sacrifice. Okay, so it's a bowl, a large bowl, right? But what do they do with it? Hashotim b'mizrakei yayin. They make it into a bowl of wine, right? Which is not used, as far as I know, for any sacred purpose. They didn't say Kiddush back then, right? But that's how they drink their wine, not from a cup, but from a large bowl. And dafke, it sounds as if it's a bowl they took. Where would they have bowls like this? In the temple, or they're manufactured by the same guy who manufactures it for the temple. So either they're taking something that is sacred, or they're taking something that is being made to be made sacred, and they're using that to guzzle their wine, okay? And then the same thing, Bereshit, Shmanim, Yimshachu. And then they take the finest of oil and they pour it on themselves, right? So that fine oil, again, when do you use it? The finest oil was used in the temple for the grain offering. And what do they do with that quality? Oh, oil for the skin, right? For your hair. It's beautiful. Makes you look magnificent. And you put in some incense in it, spices, beautiful, right? Read Shir Hashirim about, you make these beautiful ointments. You smell wonderful. That's what they're doing. And this is all consuming. This is what they are doing, okay? That word, mizrak, is found 32 times in the temple. 32 times in the Bible, okay? 32 times. 31 times it's used in what context?
With the temple.
The temple. Once.
You let us right there.
Once it's used to refer to the abuse of that. And where is that? Hello? Right here. QED. That's what these people are doing. That is they have become not the elite of the society, but from a religious perspective, the dregs of society. They're basically mocking the temple. That's what it sounds like, okay? Isn't that interesting? All right, but the lo nachlu et shever Yosef, right? No, I'm sorry, lo nechlu, not nachlu. That's a big difference. The lo nechlu al shever Yosef. What is nechlu? It's from the word chet lamed hey, meaning to become sick or disturbed. They're not disturbed about the possibility of a horrible, horrible ruin for Joseph. What's Joseph?
The northern kingdom.
Northern kingdom, right? Ephraim,
right?
Joseph, right? Ephraim, son of Joseph, was the largest tribe of the 12. All right, and Ephraim is often used for the northern kingdom. Okay, so that's Joseph. Okay, because they're drunk and they're self-centered, and therefore they have no concept of the horrible tragedy that's going to come in the. Okay, and again, we find a chiasm. Okay, I'm not going to go into details. You'll trust me. Okay, and I'm just saying that because again, the poetic aspect of this I find to be very significant, very significant. All right, moving on. Now he's going to pick up on all this stuff. Lachein ata yiglu berosh golim v'sar mizrach seruchim. So therefore now the rosh, right? This was Reishit, right? The greatness, the leading, the heads. Yiglu barosh golim. What does that mean? They will be sent in the exile
Sorry.
at the beginning, at the front of the line of exiles. They'll be the first ones to go into exile. Whoopee-doo, right? V'sar mizrach sruchim. Okay? What's a mizrach?
Isn't it east?
A mizrach is a noisy party.
Oh.
A noisy party. A noisy gathering. And sar means it's gone. It's left. It was taken away. They were the Suruchim, right? They're the ones who lounge about at these noisy parties where everybody's getting drunk, right? And that whole thing is gone. That was their life. And because of that, they're leading the line of exile. In the sense, they're moving from one crowd into another crowd. And how the first crowd created the situation that is going to bring them to the second crowd, exile. Powerful stuff. And he's using these examples because these are things that people can see. I mean, the poor people know what's going on. They see these. And he's throwing this. Remember where he's talking. This is in Beit El, in the royal, what is, it's the main temple in the south, but it's a royal temple. In other words, it's got the sanction of the king. So he's basically saying, this is you guys, no surprise here, and that's what's going to happen. Okay? All right. Poor Israel. All right. So, 1 second. Oh, yeah, but there's one thing that I don't like. No, that's the next verse. Sorry. All right, verse 8. Nishba Adonai Elohim benafsho. Ne'um Adonai Elohai tzvaot. Okay? What does he say? God swears on his own soul. And he speaks as the God of the host. Again, probably the heavenly. So you have two statements. You can see the parallel. And what he's doing basically, he's, shall we say, vetting what he's going to, the oath he's going to make, and the veracity of the speech he's going to. One, he's doing it by virtue of associating it with his own existence. And secondly, he's doing it by associating it with his power, his heavenly power, as Elohei Tzvaot. All right? And so you then again have a poem. It's an ABC. All right? But the way, then it goes on to say, Meta'ev Anochi et Gaon Yaakov, ve'armenotav saneti, let's see the dots here. Yeah, saneti. V'hizgarti ir umlo'ah. All right. And I want to take issue here with the translation, because the way he does it, the translation is this: the sovereign God wholeheartedly swears, I loathe the pride of Jacob, to test his fortresses, I will declare forfeit, city and inhabitants alike, declares the eternal, the God of. So what he has done, it takes that first statement that I read to you, okay? Nishba Adonai Elohim, Nishba Adonai Elohim benafsho, Ne'um Adonai Elohei Tzvaot. He takes the second part of the first line of verse 8. Ne'um Adonai Elohei Tzvaot. The words of God, the words of Hashem, the God of the heavenly host. He plucks, the translation plucks that out and puts it at the very end of their translation. Do you understand what I'm saying? It literally moves it as a kind of a second affirmation. And my point is, and based upon the structure, see, they totally ignored the poetic structure of the poem, because it clearly is parallel, and there is a clear definition here of an ABC pattern. And what the whole point of it is they're together. By being together, they are affirming powerfully that God is so serious that he's associating everything with the utmost expressions of his power, the power of his own essence and the power of the heavenly host that he controls. And when you put the two together, it's like giving him, it's increasing the what you call it, what's the little number, what you call it, not the quotient, the
power.
Power. Well, that's it. It is, yeah. To the third, fourth, fifth, whatever power.
Also, this English translation, at the end, it's almost anticlimactic.
Yes, exactly.
It makes it, blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah, that was what he said.
Yeah, right, exactly. When you keep them together,
Right.
it's like 2 times 2 is 4 times 4 is, 16.
Right. It
Do
multiplies,
you do you
the
need
power.
do you need mean exponential, Rabbi?
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you. That's exponential. Yes.
It grows exponentially.
Now, the Jacob in this, is that our forefather Jacob or another Jacob? I mean,
That's
he
Israel,
lived a
isn't
long
it?
time after Jacob.
No,
Isn't it Yaakov meaning Israel?
Jacob is the same as Israel.
Yeah.
Another name
Okay.
for the country, because remember, his name
Okay, yeah.
is God, right? Yeah. No,
They
so
used interchangeably.
right.
Okay.
Like they will use Ephraim, Jacob's grandson, Israel, and Jacob, all for the same thing, meaning the northern kingdom.
But
Some
not Menashe. Just Ephraim, not Menashe.
Menashe, it's mentioned, but it's a very weakened. Became a very weakened. It was not.
Okay.
And I'm sure somebody has studied which one is used when and drawn all kinds of conclusions as to why it says Israel when it says Israel, or Yaakov when it says Yaakov. Someone with a lot of time on his hands.
There are discussions of the.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
In terms of like the J tradition and the E tradition.
That's
They use the terms in different ways. Yeah, that is something that. Okay, so you can see where he's going with it's. All right, so.
oh my gosh.
Now let's get back to this to Jacob. Mita'ev anochi et gaon Yaakov. Right? I despise the pride of Jacob. V'armonotav saneti, and I hate his fortified palaces. We've had that word before many times. V'hizgarti ir umloa, and therefore I'm going to turn a city and all that's in it to the enemy. I'm going to turn it over to them. I'm going to give it to them. That's what he's going to do. All right. So mita'ev, that is a very strange root. The root is tough, aleph, vet.
Actually, ayin. The verb is actually spelled with an ayin. Tav, ayin, vet.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, wait. Right.
Okay.
Actually, it's a separate word, and that word is used much more than this. That ta'ev means to, it means it's used, listen to this, 3 times in the same Psalm, Psalm 119, okay, and once in Amos. Now, here's the interesting thing. In Psalms, it means I desire, and it would be from the same root as the other Hebrew word ta'ava, with a vav. So you have this in this word, a variation of ayin and vav, ayin and aleph and vav and vet. So in Psalm 119, it means to desire. And here it means the exact opposite, to despise. Okay. Now, as Vered mentioned, the much more common term for despise is tough ayin vet, right? Often with the nuance of disgust. So how did mita'ev, despise, happen? I'm reading my note here. Could it simply be that Amos or someone who transcribed his word made a spelling error? All right. I'm just asking. This is just a hypothetical, guy. Now, some say the word ta'ava with an aleph and a vav, which is a noun which means to desire, to lust, to yearn, comes from the Hebrew root taf aleph vav. Very strange. Or more likely, aleph vav hey, avah, avo.
The right one. Yeah. Aleph vav hey.
Aleph vav hey. But some suggest it could have been an ancient root preceding the aleph vav hey of talef, taf, aleph, vav. All right. So we have here a vav instead of a vet. All right. So anyway, we found this word mita'avim with the aleph vav root. Those who lust for the day of Adonai in last chapter, 5:18, right? They lust for the day of Adonai, thinking it's going to be a happy day, remember? At the beginning of the section preceding this, right? They're saying, they love the day they're really lusting for the day of Adonai because it's going to be a glorious day, right? And what does he say? No, it's going to be a horrible day, the worst day of your life. All right. Now, Gaon Yaakov. Now, here it's very interesting. Clearly, in this context, it has a negative meaning, right? Gaon can mean pride, right? From the Hebrew word gimel aleph, all right? And so it's used in positive form. The way I'm thinking is the Roshei Yeshiva in Bavel. I'm talking now Middle Ages, Common Era, right? Late 7th through 12th, 13th century. Their title
was Geonim.
Rosh, right, but the official title, Rosh Yeshivat Gaon
On
Yaakov,
Yaakov.
is Gaon is an abbreviation of the full title, Rosh Yeshiva of Gaon Yaakov. And both Sura and Pumbedita, the two major academies in the Middle Ages in what's today Iraq, both of them are called Gaon, the pride of Jacob. And here you see the exact term used for pride, which of course is a negative trait. Because what does the pride of Jacob mean? In whom are they proud?
Themselves. Lack of humility.
Themselves. It's self-pride, right? Or at the most, pride in the power of their kingdom, which is worthless because of what's going to happen to it. But it's interesting how these same words take on different nuances. So here you have aleph and vavs and vets and ayins and a gaon that means one thing and means the other thing. It's unbelievable. So when I tell you that a Hebrew word has 9 different meanings, as it's noted in the dictionary and the lexicon, yeah, of course it's Hebrew. Expect most languages are probably. But the problem is in our case, what? Our Bible in and of itself covers how many centuries, right? It covers from conceivably maybe 1200 BC, and the latest book is the book of Daniel in 165 BC. It covers over 1,000 years of language history. Okay, that's what happened. All right, wait. First of all, Tybal, and then Leon.
So in more modern Hebrew, when we talk about the Gaon of Vilna, I always thought that meant wise, just by context.
Yes.
Oh, that's, got it.
Yes, exactly. It is because the Gaon, I mean, the term became used for all kinds of Gaonim, right? And later on, it became very widely used. You're right. As a genius, a brilliant scholar was called a Gaon. The irony is that not all of the Roshei Yeshivot Gaon Yaakov were necessarily the greatest scholars, in the place. It was also a political figure, but it was a political. It would be like the chancellor of a university, right? He may be a scholar, a fine scholar, but he may not be the brightest scholar. But he's smart enough to bring in the brightest. That's his strength. So anyway, all right, Leon.
You see what happens when one tries to be nice and not bother? But it happens that in any language that is a root-based language, you're going to have this problem. In all, there are only 27,000 separate roots in Hebrew.
You know that for a fact.
22 to the power of 3, okay? Because there are 3 letters.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So what are you going to do with that? You have to invent new meanings into them.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that makes Hebrew so beautiful and so difficult.
Yes, you're right. And I think it's interesting, though, that you find the same word, having opposite meanings as well. And that, just makes it so for the person who's not familiar with it, it's very confusing, to say the least. But it shows.
If you take a shoresh and you put it in a different binyan, in a different construct form, then often it changes the meaning.
Yes.
So if you look at meanings versus roots, like what Arya was doing, 3 root letters times this, it depends. It could be the same root letter, but it has different meanings.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Exactly.
Yep. Excuse me. So now that the point is, so God sees, and he's just totally. That's what totally. Okay, and here too, you have a chiastic structure. Okay, so I'm mentioning that again because I told you there are a number of chiasms, not only just poetry, but chiastic poetry. But then this notion of the third clause, and by the way, the structure here of the whole thing, you have the first 2 clauses that are linked together in a chiastic poetic structure, and it's a parallelism, right, where they're bouncing off of each other. And then you have the third one, which is not as poetic, and not part of the chiasm, that expands it in a different way. So here you talk about the first 2 things about their, the things that are hateful to God, And the third part is the Hisgarti Ir Umloa, that I will turn over a city and everything in it, which is a whole new thing, which is the punishment for that kind of behavior. And we saw the same thing in chapter 5, that same kind of structure of the chiasm like this, and then the third element, which is a new expression. And I showed you then that the first time it's used, does anybody remember? That structure of A, B, C, C, B, A, right? They are complementing each other, repeating the same idea in reverse, structure. And then the third one, anybody remember what it was? Genesis chapter 1, a very simple, easy line to remember, the simplest line in the entire chapter.
The one that ends with bara?
No.
Uh-oh, we need Vera.
Wait. What did you say?
The one that ends with bara.
Say the whole line.
Oh, if I could, I would have.
All right, you're close.
I don't remember how it's beginning at.
No, it is. Vayivra Elohim et Adam b'tzalmo, b'tzelem Elohim bara otam. Zachar nekeva bara otam. So the first two, basically the same thing over and over again. And the third one tells us that they were created male and female, a new piece of information. So it's chiasm, a three clause sentence. The first two in chiastic relationship. The third, an addition. Boom, boom. 3 times we see. And there are a few others. I'm going to now go. My next project is to read through the entire Hebrew Bible and to count such structures so I can write a paper. And in the paper, what will I conclude? I have absolutely no idea. Anyway, I'm not going to do that. I don't have time. Maybe I will when I fully retire.
Rabbi?
What?
If my adult child were here, he would tell you that's what AI is for.
Yeah, I was just
sign up for an AI program and ask it the question.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sure there's a Hebrew one where you could ask that question and get an answer.
Well, the problem with AI would be understanding the chiasm. It wouldn't be so much because it's not just a search. It's an understanding on how the pieces fit together. And that's reason, and we don't have any AI can do that yet.
I don't know. The Jews are very smart. The people.
I'm not saying that it won't be. I'm simply saying that as far as I know, my analysis up to now, and I use AI a lot, is that it's extremely good at finding things. It is not at all capable of understanding things. Okay, so it can abstract them well because it's got structures, but it can't, chiasms, you'd have to understand what the meaning of the words are. And I think that is still a ways off. I think it'll happen.
It's interesting because I'm writing some papers for the Siddur project that one of our members is working. And so I finished my first paper. Did I tell you this? And it was like 6-7 pages. And he fed it he gave it over to the guy who does the AI work for him, who happens to be a Talmid Chacham in it. I mean, he's got a doctorate in computer science, but he also is a Yodea Sefer. He's well read in traditional books. So this is the guy. What they do is they take your 6-page paper and they feed it through the AI, and the AI comes up with a Reader's Digest version of a page and a half. But he doesn't go right to publish it. He sends it back to me, and he says to me, is there something in here that you think is very important that it left out? And I read it over, and basically it hit all the main points, and it was nicely laid out. But I said, there's this and that. So he said, fine, write it in. And I did. Very simple. I didn't write a whole long excursus on it, but a few short sentences, filled in the gap, and that was fine. But it was as an introductory reading of what I was trying to say. It captured the essential parts.
I found that you can dialogue with AI. In other words, in a case like that, you can go back and say, yes, but you didn't include this and that, or you misunderstood that. And very often we'll say, sorry, here's a revised version.
That's interesting.
I've noticed that. You can also try to, when you argue with him, he'll agree with you. But the next time you argue with him, he'll go through the same exact points that he did before.
So
I know people like that.
There is no learning.
Yeah, not yet. Okay. Tybal.
If it's okay to say on the recording, who's the member who's putting the book together?
Say again?
You said there's a member that you're writing parts of a book for? Who's the member who's putting the book together?
Oh no, it's more than that. He's doing a whole major. It's a huge project.
Yeah, but I'm saying, is it okay on a recording to say who the person is?
Yes.
And who is it?
Give me a moment. But me and names and words at this.
Oh yeah, it's like the joke. What's the flower called? That joke about the old man who can't remember his own spouse's name, so he
Rose.
says, "What's the flower called?"
Rose.
Yeah, Rose. Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's me. Anyway, hold on. No, I don't want to waste your time right now. I'll remember next time you'll ask me. I'll write it down.